and Togo. From comprehensive election coverage to informative investigative pieces, this upcoming season will provide new insights and thought-provoking conversations. Citizens Hour Season 2, in partnership with the National Endowment for Democracy, NED, on West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM Dakar. It's you speaking.
Hello and welcome to Citizens Hour, supported by the National Endowment for Democracy, NED, on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM in Dakar, Senegal. We are also streaming live on Facebook at WADR English and YouTube at WADR News. I am Veronica Njai. Over the past few years, the Central Sahel has experienced a series of military coups that have reshaped governance and regional politics across West Africa. Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have all undergone military transitions that have triggered reactions from regional bodies, particularly the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. These responses have included sanctions, suspensions, diplomatic engagement, and mediation efforts aimed at restoring constitutional order. However, these measures have sparked intense debate. While some argue that ECOWAS must defend democracy and constitutional governance, others believe that these interventions have not addressed the root causes of the governance issues and the failures in the stability situations in these countries. At the same time, the emergence of the Alliance of Sahel States, otherwise known as the AES, and the withdrawal of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger from ECOWAS have also raised serious questions about the future of regional integration and cooperation. So today we ask, have regional responses to coups in the Central Sahel been effective, and what do these developments mean for democracy, governance, and stability in West Africa? Remember, you can interact with us via our social media handles at WADR English and send us a message on +221 7818 4521. So for today's conversation, we are joined by Dr. Femi Araribia Ibrahim, who is a conflict studies scholar, consultant, and was also a former human rights observer for the African Union in Mali. Good morning, Mr. Femi.
Good morning, Veronica.
I hope you're good.
How are you?
I'm good, sir.
I'm good. It's my pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And we also have David Asante Dako, but David is yet to join us. We will also be joined by Pep Dabugad, who is also the Executive Director of the Center for Innovation, Governance, and Sustainable Development in Nigeria. So we begin the conversation with the regional responses to coups in the region. Dr. Femi, I'll start with you. While we wait on the other guests to join the conversation, how would you assess ECOWAS and other regional actors' response to coups in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger?
Thank you very much. Let me first of all establish a kind of ground norm so that citizens understand where we are coming from. First, when we speak of ECOWAS, we are referring to the community as a whole and not just the secretariat as we have in the structure in Abuja or anywhere they have their offices. And for this reason, I want the citizens to know that the authority lies on the head of state that serve as a sovereign leader for all the rest of the state. So the decision taking comes from them. And so I just want to distinguish that from those that had had the feelings that when we talk about ECOWAS, we are only referring to the ECOWAS secretariat as we have in Abuja. Now, secondly, ECOWAS derives its mandate and legitimacy to shape the region's democratic system from diverse yet related international and regional normative frameworks. So by this we mean, or rather for this purpose, for this program, let me just limit it to two. The most two relevant normative framework for this topic I will consider as the 2001 Supplementary Protocol on Democracy and Good Governance, which is an add-on to the December 1999 protocol relating to the mechanism for conflict prevention, management, resolution, peacekeeping, and security, which is generally referred to as mechanism. The ECOWAS, in its resolve to strengthen the democratic governance within the community, amongst other, provides, now I'll quote some of the ground norm that will support the decision taken by the ECOWAS Secretariat, which is supported by the African Union, African Union Consultative Program, to support the decision that was taken on the issue of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. There is what they call the principle of constitutional convergence, which is in Article 1A of the protocol we cited above. That is the 2001 we had already cited, which is Supplementary Protocol on Democracy and Good Governance. The Article 1 says that the Protocol on Democracy and Good Governance refers to the principle shared by the member state involved in separation of power among the executive, the legislative, and the judiciary. So the empowerment and strengthening of parliaments and the guarantee of the parliamentary immunity are very important to keep different arms of government separate. And I think this is why this one, the issue of constitutional convergence principle comes up, because it promotes the independence of the judiciary vis-a-vis the liberty of the judge to discharge, the judges to discharge their responsibilities without fear or favor.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay.
Article 1B. I just want to lay
the foundation,
the basis.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
The foundation for, supporting why ECOWAS had to take the decision it took on the issue of the three brother states that we are now referring to. Article 1B provides that every accession to power must be made through free, fair, and transparent election. Article 1C speaks on the zero tolerance for power obtained or maintained by unconstitutional means. Now, Article 1E provides that the armed forces must be apolitical. And so when they are political, it means they must not get involved in any of the political issues, at least officially. So no serving member of armed force may speak to run or may seek to run elected position. So now let me go to the mechanism. Article 22D of the mechanism of 1999 charges ECOMOG with the enforcement of sanction, including an embargo and preventive deployment where necessary. So all the 15 member states, including the 3 that are no longer, that are hopefully that are just left temporarily, were signatory to these 2 protocols that I've cited. So it means that if you are signatory to a protocol, then you are bound by it. So this is why I think whatever decision that ECOWAS had taken, regarding the Mali, Niger, and they had appended their signature. Okay, so I will wait. I will stop now.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Femi, for laying the foundation. It is such a good base to start the conversation. But now I will bring in Mr. Kopib Dabugat. Mr. Kopib, welcome to the program. Mr. Dabugat, are you here? Okay. Mr. Dabugat, could you please unmute? It seems like you're muted. I'm not sure if you realize that you're muted because I can see you're here, but it's like you're muted. Okay, let's continue the conversation, Mr. Femi. You did say that you were laying the foundation so we understand why ECOWAS took the decisions that it took. But now let's look at the effectiveness of these decisions.
Oh, sorry, I am on now.
Okay. Okay, we were trying to have you on board. But now I was about to ask Mr. Ibrahim about the decisions that ECOWAS took. But now I think I'll pose the question to you. Looking at the decisions that were taken by ECOWAS about handling the coups, the aftermath of the coups, how would you weigh the effectiveness of these decisions or the reactions?
Well, I think I would say thank you very much. And it's always a pleasure to be here. And yes, Veronica. So your question is a very, very important question in this discourse about coups in West Africa, or about coups in general, returning to Africa. I will start by saying that the responses of ECOWAS to the coups, all the coups as they happen successively, have been on point. And I think, thank you, Mr. Olorunfemi. I think he has been able to reel out a lot of the charter provisions that define ECOWAS responses. I think the first and most important thing you can look at is the fact that the ECOWAS charter outlines very clearly specific sections that clearly do not tolerate coups. In fact, there is zero tolerance for coups and zero tolerance for power obtained through unconstitutional means, including coup, which is the most popular type. So in response to that, normally what ECOWAS does is to quickly get in touch with the military junta that comes into power through such coups. And then following that, they begin to engage with the country to see how ECOWAS can assist the government in place to return it back to a democratic norm. I think that is what ECOWAS has tried to do. ECOWAS has usually issued out statements that condemn the coup and try to engage. Now, engaging a sovereign state even if the regime in power, it has not been recognized by ECOWAS, is a political issue, and that is where normally ECOWAS usually falters in its own responses. Now, you find out that yes, ECOWAS usually responds to condemn coups, but these responses, most of the time, usually, first of all, come late, and sometimes the wordings of the condemnation are usually watered down, such that the responses do not seem as if the coup is something of serious importance, but these are fundamental things that the ECOWAS Charter needs to zero in on. So in that angle, yes, ECOWAS does everything according to its charter, but also does it in such a way that does not have effect. And that is because ECOWAS in itself does not even have the capacity in terms of the enforcement capacity to enforce that decision. So yes, they give statements, they engage the country, but invariably the country does what it wants to do. They try to achieve, and especially in these recent cases between, let's say, from 2020 till present, successful coup plotters usually just listen to ECOWAS and do what they want, and that really renders ECOWAS very, very clearly ineffective in dealing with these coups. I think the most recent debacle in that series is the instance where ECOWAS tries to intervene in Niger, and the military junta in Niger simply, told them that if they were going to intervene militarily, the country was going to mobilize and face the ECOWAS soldiers. And then following that, the AES countries now came together under a confederation, So that in itself defined a new path towards engaging military juntas. Whether ECOWAS has the capacity to really engage these military juntas and even go all the way to the point where they have to deploy the ECOWAS standby force to return the country back to democratic governance is something that we're left to see. Where they tried that, they forced the Sahelian countries into the AES. And then following that also, we've seen Guinea now deciding to also walk back on what has been agreed with ECOWAS in terms of its transition program. And then we've seen Guinea-Bissau also fall to a coup. And we're seeing an attempted coup we saw an attempted coup in Benin, which was foiled thanks to Nigeria. And then also a coup in planning within Nigeria that was being foiled. So I think ECOWAS seems to have lost control over the ability, the capacity to actually deal effectively with coup incidents. And that, I think, defines the current mode of the regional engagement process in West Africa.
All right, you did mention very pertinent stuff. You also cited the creation of the AES. We'll get into that in a bit. You said that ECOWAS lacks enforcement capacity and also the late response, that the wordings in the charter are watered down. It does not react in such a way that it makes the reactions effective. Mr. Ibrahim, you understand ECOWAS. I mean, you have worked with these regional actors. You've worked with the African Union as an observer in Mali. Would you agree with some of the statements that have been made by Mr. Dabogard regarding the reactions and the effectiveness of the reactions by ECOWAS?
Thanks so much. I think I will say yes and no, especially on the issue of capacity to intervene. I am aware of the fact that there were a lot of effort put in. As a matter of fact, I became a human rights observer through ECOWAS. And so when AU decamped from amusement, then African Union took over. And that was how I became. So what I'm trying to say is that ECOWAS had always tried subtle diplomacy. They had, in my opinion, never wanted the kind of situation we are now facing. And even coming to the Niger issue, I can say with all confidence that I'm aware that boots were already in Nigeria, and I know it took a lot of persuasion to say, including political consideration, because Niger share over 900 miles of border with Nigeria. Most people around the borderline have their relations either in Niger or Nigeria. And I remember a professor that came on the television condemning the government of Nigeria. Unfortunately, by that time, the government of President Tinubu was the chairperson of ECOWAS head of state. And this became an issue of is a Nigeria-Niger problem. Why would you allow boot to go to on Niger land that share borders with Nigeria? So it became a very serious issue. So on this, I think they have the capacity, really. ECOWAS has the capacity. They did it in Liberia and Sierra Leone. So they could as well replicate the same system, when these two countries were involved. But I can assure you I'm one of those people who was bitterly against the idea of having boots on the ground, because I know the implication when a population of Nigerian that live along the border, most of the population live northern part of Nigeria. So if there were to be problems there, the refugee in Nigeria will be overwhelming, considering the situation, especially in terms of terrorism and all those banditry that were happening, across the borders. So some of us felt that no, it will not be wise for Nigeria to concede to the fact that the boots will be put on the ground. So I think that was one of the reasons that led to that. So in terms of giving sanctions, really, posting sanctions, as I've said, I've never supported it, because I know those people that are going to be affected and not those leaders or the head of authorities or the head of states. They are those people that we are trying to protect in terms of their democratic value that will be mostly affected. So based on that, but unfortunately now the issue of the AS came to be. The AS, to me, is a child of circumstance. I'm not sure when ECOWAS planned the imposition of sanctions as they've done before, they never thought that it would lead to where it led now, because there had been head of state coup plotters that became head of state,
But
that
Mr. Ibrahim,
never
doesn't that widely describe the failure that we are trying to avoid, the conversation you're trying to avoid about the failure of the organization to effectively react to the situation? Isn't that why you said that the AES is a child of circumstance? But wasn't the inability to effectively contain the situation the reason why we have the AES at the moment?
As I said, since every nation is a sovereign country, you have the right to pull out. We've had several coups that happened in Mali, in Niger. As a matter of fact, I think I wrote a paper on some of those. There are several coups. I wrote a paper on some of their several coups that took place in Niger, and the same thing in Burkina Faso. And we had leaders sanctioned. The ECOWAS had leaders sanctioned, and they never pull away. They at the end of the day, diplomatic maneuvering, helped the situation. And that was why those people that are there now are able to be there in the first instance. I happen to be one of the 3 people that Sango, the former coup leader in Mali, granted interview, because he refused to grant interview to any, including UN, but he said because we are African Union. And part of the thing he said was that this kind of coup, it wasn't his problem, but then that if the failure of some of the situation, things that were expected to put in place were not put in place, that coup will continue. And just as he rightly put it, after some few years, after he mentioned, he made this statement, it came to pass. So I wouldn't see it as truly a failure, because the countries, they have the right to choose or to walk away at any time. As a matter of fact, the AES, they walk away before even the mandatory 1 year elapsed. And ECOWAS still maintain some of their citizens within ECOWAS until very late. Within the secretariat until very late, that were now discharged from the responsibility. The brotherly or the blood we shared across the boundary, I think, was probably one of the reasons why they too, who are now more radical, and probably more purposeful than the former coup leaders, and in a situation, are able to just walk away without with the rest of ECOWAS looking helpless and now trying to see how they could bring them back to fold.
All right, let's bring in Mr. Dabugat here. Mr. Dabugat, you've heard some of the comments that Mr. Ibrahim has made, but then I'll pose this question. He spoke widely about the creation of the Alliance of Sahel States, which is the AES. And I want to ask, does the withdrawal of Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger from the Economic Community of West African States, in this case ECOWAS, represent a serious weakening of ECOWAS?
Well, it's, I wouldn't say a weakening. It is a signal for what needs to happen in West Africa. You see, I said, I mentioned, and I still maintain that ECOWAS, does not have the capacity to respond effectively. I'm not saying it doesn't have the capacity, but effectively in such a way that it gets results. We have not yet seen an ECOWAS response that is within the last 6 years. We have not seen an ECOWAS response that has actually reversed the coup. So that really defines my answer. But to go to your question about the withdrawal of the AES countries and founding the AES, being, a weakening of ECOWAS, I don't agree. So I think they are aware at that point, 15 countries that belong to ECOWAS, and a withdrawal of just 3 of them does not mean it has been weakened, you know. Rather, it gives us a food for thought. You see, the withdrawal of this country, these three countries, only takes away, well, yes, a large part of the territory of the ECOWAS. But even at that, in terms of trade flows, remember ECOWAS is an economic union. You know, in terms of trade flows, economic share, and even population share of these countries, I think, you know, it doesn't show a weakening per se. Most of the trade that flows into ECOWAS actually flow through, you know, from the coast upwards. And even these countries, even up till now, they are connected to the ECOWAS countries in terms of trade. In terms of even the economy itself, what ensures that the economies keep booming in terms of trade in food items, trade in goods, even right down to mechanical products like motor spare parts and all that. They rely on the ECOWAS countries, you know. The creation of AES, of course, is a political thing, as I had mentioned earlier. It's a political thing, you know, and ECOWAS has definitely been as benevolent as expected by ensuring that these countries economically are still connected to the ECOWAS, to ensure that the effect of that split, you know, does not take the wrong turn. So economically, these countries are still connected, you know. Politically, ECOWAS is trying hard to maintain, you know, that connection so that the fallout effects of what is happening in these countries may not ultimately affect, you know, the well-being of the entire ECOWAS region. So ECOWAS has actually stepped up to ensure that it is able to strengthen itself in those parts. But in terms of what this signifies, I think the departure of the AES countries also provide ECOWAS a window of opportunity to ensure that it now repositions itself to take the right kinds of actions and to be decisive enough on issues of coup d'etat in the country. You know, I would even boldly say here that it calls for ECOWAS to, you know, accelerate a reformation process. I know that there is a reform agenda going on in ECOWAS, and it is important for ECOWAS to actually hit the nail where it should hold the wood. You understand? For example, I think part of my opinion, though, of saying that ECOWAS is not able to decisively respond to coups means that ECOWAS is not able to take the decisions that it needs to take and follow through with them. You know, follow through with them. That is the very, very important thing about decision making. And the decisions of ECOWAS do not match, you know, its ability to be able to enforce them. You know, and that is where the problem, and the problem is simply because of the challenges or the structural inadequacies in the ECOWAS system. You know, for example, if we are moving in the direction of regional integration in real terms, then ECOWAS should be having a plan for a lot of things. For example, how do we transform our ECOWAS parliament into a legislative parliament rather than an advisory parliament whose opinion can be taken or rejected or ignored by the ECOWAS heads of states? Secondly, we have to have an ECOWAS where the ECOWAS Court of Justice issues decisions, you know, that impinge on the actions of the countries within the region in such a way that these decisions are enforceable rather than advisory. And thirdly, the entire decision-making structure that relates to peace and security entirely in the region needs to be looked at the top of that decision-making infrastructure, which is the top of the ECOWAS infrastructure, which can be said to be the executive of the ECOWAS, is the authority of heads of state and government. And the authority of heads of state and government operates, like a club, so to say, of heads of state, because where their decisions do not tally with the reality even of what their citizens, the global community, even the African Union calls for, they decide, to follow their instincts or their interests, rather. So the decision of ECOWAS as a whole, the main decisions that are being reduced to actions and programs by the ECOWAS Commission actually are reflective of the consensus that the heads of state are able to build among themselves within the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State. Not reflective of the decisions and the aspirations of the citizens. So you find out that there is that disjoint. The ECOWAS Commission has to wait for the heads of state to okay any decision it wants to issue. It has to wait for the heads of state or their body language to take a decision to issue a statement. That political consideration, I think, is what limits, the effectiveness of ECOWAS actions. So you find out that the whole structure from the Authority of Heads of State, the Mediation and Security Council, down even to the decisions about deploying the ECOWAS standby force to engage with causes, with coup events, as well as even the decisions of the Political Affairs, Peace and Security Commission of the ECOWAS, have to depend on what the ECOWAS heads of state are likely to want or to see being done. So that political consideration is what really limits the effectiveness of ECOWAS.
All right. Mr. Ibrahim, Mr. Dabugat raised very pertinent conversations, especially regarding political considerations within the ECOWAS. He also did describe them as a club of head of states following their interest. And this is not the first time we are hearing something like this. A lot of people had said that the interference of the heads of state with the policies and the decisions that are made by ECOWAS have largely affected the effectiveness of ECOWAS. Would you also cite that as a problem? Because you have been within the organization and to a large extent understand some of the decisions and why they are taken. Would you also cite political considerations within the bloc as a major problem that is impeding the effectiveness of the organization?
Thank you very much, Vero. I think my brother really hit it. Hit the nail on its head. The truth is that I will not consider the involvement of the head of states as like kind of body something, because it's part of the constitutional. The part of the protocol. They have the responsibility to do exactly, to intervene in some of these decisions. So you cannot, as a body, unlike what we have in the European Union, that's why I try to give that initial try to spell out the initial position that I took, trying to establish the relationship that exists between the ECOWAS authority and the ECOWAS Secretariat. Secretariat is just like the technical body, you know, they take decision and forward it through the Secretariat, which is now the Commission, to the head of state. And any decision not taken by any decision not supported by the head of state is seen as dead on arrival, you know. And for this reason, most of the head of state, they have their interest, just as my brother rightly put it. And those interests define the direction or directions that any position taken, no matter how beautifully worded Dr. Fattah Musa, submitted, put a document or a memo or to the president. When the moment the president submits and the head of state just feel that, no, forget it, we are not going to do it. Like the case of this putting boots on ground, there were some of the head of state that insisted that no. As a matter of fact, as I've said, the boot, some of the soldiers were already on ground. But some countries who were against that, and they just said no, we cannot continue. And the moment you have the highest population, the highest vote of saying the nay, is dead. So I think this is the situation. It's not as if they were meddling in the first instance. No, it's not. It's not that. The fact is that is what the protocol. That is what is contained in the protocol. So there is no way they could. The secretariat could go out of the protocol and start issuing their own directive, because, as I've said, they are just technical. They are experts in the field, and no matter how beautifully written those submission are or were, the moment they have the meeting of the authority, and they said no, it means no.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Regarding the political considerations, would we say, due to these political considerations, this question is for you, Mr. Dabogad, is ECOWAS currently witnessing or facing a legitimacy crisis among citizens in parts of the Sahel? You're muted, Mr. Dabogad. I can see you speaking, but you're muted.
I would say yes. Thank you very much, Veronique. And I think this is a very pertinent question at this point for ECOWAS. But I think I can make some comments to highlight particularly some of the things I've read. Some of the research I have come across. You see, the truth is that I wouldn't say ECOWAS is facing a legitimacy crisis, because if you talk about ECOWAS in those terms, it may seem as if ECOWAS is just a body that is up there, in West Africa, at the top of West Africa. No, ECOWAS is made up of member states, and ECOWAS should be felt at the member states level. Where it cannot be felt at the member states level, then ECOWAS ceases to exist. That is the point at which you will say ECOWAS lacks legitimacy, for example. But there are some realities that confirm that ECOWAS is actually on ground in the countries. There are national, units of ECOWAS, each of which is headed by an ambassador now, or rather each of which is headed by someone within the Foreign Affairs Ministry. And then ECOWAS actually designates an ambassador that sits there, that brings, news and information back to the ECOWAS. So there is some presence. So there is a legitimacy, baseline there. But looking at the countries themselves, I think the problem is a problem of the countries, because ECOWAS is just like a tool that the countries are supposed to use, bringing themselves together. But because of their individual complications, which are internal to them, they have not been able to come to that point where they merge fully into ECOWAS. And that is what perhaps might have created some sort of crisis of legitimacy. As a matter of fact, actually, when you go down to the citizens level now, you realize that the citizens of the West African countries honestly don't seem to, connect the reality of ECOWAS with their own realities. And in fact, I can cite two very, very clear studies that were being done about the presence of ECOWAS within some countries, especially within the context of peace and security issues. You remember the time when there was a mass uprising in Burkina Faso in response, to the against the presence of what is the name of the former president, Blaise Compaoré of Burkina Faso. Okay. So I mean, there were some perceptive studies that were done at that point, and it found out that ECOWAS citizens actually view ECOWAS more as an either an occupying force or as a body that comes to show its power on the ground. There is also a side of the study that tries to find out about what the citizens think ECOWAS is there to do for them. They say no, they are not. They don't understand what ECOWAS is there to do for them. You understand? So that shows, that gap of education, of sensitization, of information, apprehension among the citizens within these countries about ECOWAS, and then critically and in relation to the citizens themselves, how do citizens really come to feel part of the ECOWAS? Just like citizens now feel, yes, a country, let's say whether Nigeria, Ghana, Senegal, is their country. Are there people that can now stand and say, okay, West Africa is, my regional institution, perhaps, so I think this draws us to the point where we talk about how ECOWAS is going about getting itself known, getting itself engaged with the citizens of the ECOWAS region. And that falls in line with what ECOWAS, has been trying to do or has been trying to achieve, I would say beginning from 2011 with the ECOWAS sloganizing about movement from an ECOWAS of states to an ECOWAS of people, and that defines a very, very clear reform agenda that ECOWAS needs to do. And in fact, the current ECOWAS strategy highlights that very strongly. ECOWAS, from ECOWAS of states to ECOWAS of people. That is the strategy beginning from 2025 in ECOWAS. Now, this is a strategy that I feel has a lot of potential for bringing ECOWAS up to speed where it is supposed to be in terms of regional integration. But unfortunately, I don't know how far ECOWAS is implementing that. I don't even know how well defined, you know, this strategy is at the moment, you know, in terms of its implementation. But definitely such a strategy will need to produce a reform of the ECOWAS decision-making mechanism to ensure that it is more effective. Must have to ensure a linkage with the ECOWAS peoples and citizens in terms of their own aspirations. The ECOWAS activities and policies need to reflect what the citizens of ECOWAS want to see. You know, so these two things, if the ECOWAS strategy is able to produce, I think ECOWAS must have advanced and we were able to see more and more results to the actions of ECOWAS.
All right, Mr. Ibrahim, a lot has been said, but then I'll just bring in the conversation regarding transitioning from ECOWAS of the state to ECOWAS of the people. What would it take to have the ECOWAS of the people? What would it even take for it to be successful if ECOWAS has to move or transition from state to the people?
Thank you, Vero. I think the issue that I raised initially still come to play. That at times we look at ECOWAS as there, okay, versus the people who are here. And I've been trying severally to disabuse that in every of workshop or any conferences that I participated discussing this issue. In my opinion, I don't think ECOWAS is there and we are here as citizens. The issue is that we refuse to accept that ECOWAS, yes, there is a need to still democratize the what some people call overbearing influence of the head of authority or the head of states, which, I mean, my brother pointed at just now. I truly do not believe that attention, yes, the ECOWAS, the moving ECOWAS at the ECOWAS of people to ECOWAS of the community, it's just to further decentralize. I've participated severally in the election. I've been apart from Liberia and Guinea-Conakry and Guinea-Bissau. There is none of these states. You're not hearing me?
Oh, no, I can hear you. I can hear you. Sorry.
There is none of these that are not probably across the country. And I know the kind of welcoming, I mean, reception they normally accorded. Me seeing the jacket one is wearing as serving ECOWAS, you know. So there is no single of the member state that is not having enough, I mean, having a lot of people within the secretariat. Now, the level of yeah, I will agree that we've not been having, they've not been publicizing their work, you know, thoroughly. But I don't think there's anything they can do without democratizing that particular aspect of where the head of state have the overall take. But at the same time, where this will probably raise some issue is when the issue of sovereignty comes on, because this is exactly why the three states under consideration are behaving the way they are behaving, because you cannot force them to accept a decision taken by ECOWAS. Now I'm talking about ECOWAS as a community, not even as people. You cannot force any state to abide by any decision, you know. And some of the some of the guiding principles that could checkmate them were those ones that I related to initially. But then they choose to pull out because they were, because they were sanctioned. So no matter what, I still do not know, even with the European Union that is running like a country, with their own system. I mean, we see Hungary and one or two other states disagreeing openly and saying that they were willing to pull out. So the ECOWAS of community is just to democratize the system more, so that people, the so-called lower people, I'm sorry using that word, will benefit the more. But I think the population are conscious of of the working of, some people are conscious of some of the working of ECOWAS, not many, and I think this is majorly because there had not been enough, there are information gaps which they've not been able to really address. And I'm sure when that one is done, by the time they finish the Vision 2030 now, or 2050, the moment that one comes to play, I'm sure most of these issues that are yet to be addressed will be addressed appropriately, and maybe, people will be more aware of what is happening, because it said severally that people could not understand what is happening because there were less information shared, and since, especially within the three languages, and we normally have problem on this when the so-called either Anglophone or Francophone or Lusophone, this one will say, oh, I'm not hearing you because of the language issue. And then those people that are supposed to have publicized the working of the community, of ECOWAS, and you could see I was using community during most of this discussion here, because I believe strongly that information relating to the welfare of ECOWAS citizens should be disseminated appropriately, so that even the so-called uneducated will be able to understand what is happening. So I agree with my brother there, for some of those points he raised.
All right. Mr. Doublegat, still looking at ECOWAS, the creation of the AES, would you say that the AES has the potential to evolve into a long-term alternative regional bloc?
Oh, of course, yes. Mr. Riva B. Ibrahim has said it very clearly, that the international norm is that every country is free to choose where to.
I guess we are having some network issues with Mr. Doublegat, but while he resolves that, we continue the conversation with Mr. Ibrahim. Mr. Ibrahim, you've raised very pertinent issues that are going on with the ECOWAS, and also what should be done if the ECOWAS must transition from an ECOWAS of the state to the ECOWAS of the people. But just like I posed the question to Mr. Doublegat, could AES evolve into a long-term alternative regional bloc?
I truly do not think that would be to their best of interest. Doublegat said it initially, some few minutes back, how we linked. I know Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, they are having very serious challenges when it comes to the issue of security. And unfortunately, they share boundaries with very, very porous countries too, countries that are being riddled by violence and different different conflict situations, like Chad, like Libya, or large expanse of land, between Mali, for example, and Libya, going through the northern Mali, Gao, Kidal, to which is, I think, the last town in the northern region of Mali. So with this kind of situation, yes, as brothers, the other 12 remaining states for now are still trying all their diplomatic effort to make sure that they can come back. But having just 3 countries in such a porous situation might not be too good for them at the end of the day. If not, what we are likely to be seeing is coup upon coup. Because yes, from record, at least now that Niger, the 3 countries have access to their to their wealth in terms of managing their natural and human resources. That would guarantee a lot of opportunity for them to develop far more than the way they were when they refer to them as occupiers, which some of them are still facing, are in charge of their countries. So in terms of them being alone, it's not that it's impossible. They could, but I think it's going to be very difficult. I mean, having to manage such large, very large land space that could be very, very difficult for them in terms of the military presence to handle. Even with this one, they pull out from with the Niger pull out with some of the joint task force they belong to. Unfortunately, they've not been finding it easy because the transborder schematics have always been there. The jihadis easily moved from their country to Nigeria, and when the heat is on them, they run back. So managing those groups is always problematic, and there is no state can develop when they have very serious security challenges. None, and I repeat, none of the 3 states can manage their landmass. None. In terms of their military power, in terms of everything, their security, none of them can manage, such mass landmass. So for this reason, I don't see how, even though they are attempting it as they are now, it's still very early to really judge them, But then I don't really think that it's a thing they'll be able to manage for a long time before probably they collapse. No matter how many support they receive from it at international level, I don't really think they can go for too long. So I'm sure the ECOWAS is still making frantic effort. I know states like Ghana, Senegal, they've been making frantic effort to see how they could be convinced to come back home, because I see ECOWAS as home for them. I've said we share the same boundary at different levels, and just as my brother said, we still economically, most of the tomato they are using in Ghana, as I was told, come from Burkina Faso. Even despite the fact that and I'm sure they don't have the boundary movements problem. They still go in and come out. So if you have brothers that still leave their own country, cross their own border to another country without necessarily being challenged, I seriously can't see how how much of problem they are really having with the rest of the 12 states. But I truly don't see how they could manage and successfully carry out, with the way they are now. Whether they are richer, far richer or not, it's not going to be too long, because there are other military too. I mean, the Burkina Faso president or head of state that had been there for how many years? There had been about one or two attempted coup against his government. So for how long will he be able to defend it? So this is my take.
All right, let's look at the shrinking civic space. Obviously, you've mentioned a lot regarding what is happening in the context of these countries and the fact that you do not think that they will be able to maintain their position long term. However, we have seen a lot of things happening in the Sahel. Let's say, for example, in Mali this week, we've seen arrest of journalists like Chahana Takio. We've also seen the arrest of Abdurrahman Keita in Mali. The civic space is shrinking. People are afraid to speak their mind, but still we see records of popular support for these governments. Why do you think that these military-led governments still enjoy popular support in some contexts, despite democratic concerns?
Well, civil space will always shrink whenever there is what we call the autocratic rule. The democratic system they enjoy when it is a civilian head of state in charge. You cannot have it when the military is it's a normal thing, because
Mr. Ibrahim, are you there? Okay, it seems that we have lost Mr. Ibrahim.
I have witnessed so many elections, and I will tell you for a fact that INEC cannot deliver free and fair election.
We need to even unpack what political commitment is.
This April on West Africa Democracy Radio, Citizens Hour goes to the Sahel.
Democracy right now in Mali is an idea that has been rejected.
The Multinational Joint Task Force remains committed to its mandate of creating a safe and secure environment in the Lake Chad areas.
In partnership with the National Endowment for Democracy, NED, your favorite democracy and governance program will focus on Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and other West African countries, including Benin, Nigeria, the Gambia, and Togo. From comprehensive election coverage to informative investigative pieces, this upcoming season will provide new insights and thought-provoking conversations. Citizens Hour Season 2, in partnership with the National Endowment for Democracy, NED, on West Africa Democracy Radio, 94.9 FM Dakar. It's you speaking.
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Ibrahim. Welcome
Yes,
back.
I've been on.
Okay, welcome back.
Thank you.
I realized you had issues with the network, but again, these are things that we do not have control over. But we still continue the conversation regarding the military takeovers in the Central Sahel and the effectiveness of the responses of the regional blocs. If you're just joining us, you're listening to Citizens Hour, supported by the National Endowment for Democracy, NED, on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM. You can also listen to us live on WADR.org or on Facebook and YouTube. Now we still on the conversations, but let's look at reforms necessary for ECOWAS at this point. You've said a lot regarding some of the lapses about the measures that were put in place by ECOWAS. There was also a conversation about moving from the ECOWAS of the state to the ECOWAS of the people. But now if we are to look at all what has been discussed, what reforms are urgently needed for ECOWAS to regain credibility and effectiveness, especially in the Central Sahel?
I think maybe it's going to come from the issue of having to discuss, with the authority that if you have a secretariat that you employed and pay so much, and paid handsomely, that will now spend tireless night to prepare documents, from experts, it should not be thrown away like that. And again, most of the decisions made, the head of state should be able to follow through and make sure that decisions arrived at are carried out to the letter. I know there are some of the even of some of the statutory position that's supposed to have been established are still not yet done, although I know they are working, especially like ECOSOC, they are working on it. And I'm sure, because it's supposed to be another arms of ECOWAS. Just like you have the Court of Justice and the Commission, ECOSOC is supposed to be in that situation too. So there are some of those statutory bodies that are supposed to have been, or agencies that are supposed to have been set up, which have not been done. If ECOSOC had been there, has been established, which involve a lot of NGOs and private organizations, the issue of being very far away, of the system being run far away from, as what they call ECOWAS of the people, will probably be no longer there, because you have CSO, apart from just participating now in the meetings, and they are going to have the kind of statutory, they will form a kind of statutory body that can participate in most of the program, and will be able to give opinion too, that will be discussed at the head of state level directly, without necessarily being unnecessarily censored. Then I think we should find a way, since they've agreed to be together as an ECOWAS, as an organization, and they all sign to follow the rules. They should be strong enough. I don't want to use a language that I'll be. They should be strong enough to allow decision making, stand. Because when we agree as a body to take a decision, if affected other states and you are in a position to take decision against those states, but then when it affects you, you now say, no, I'm not going to accept it, and run away. There should be deliberate effort to make sure that decision taking follow through, and it should be, because I know when voting, they normally agreed on concession. So if you agree to be part of something, you shouldn't go against it. and if you have to go against it, you should have cogent reason, but not just pull out as the three countries.
Mr. Ibrahim, are you here?
Current reasons, very good. Hello?
Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay. So I think that is my position, that the reforms should be made quick, but I know with the now another set of the statutory members or position that will be probably be departing, whose position have ended, will be departing ECOWAS in another 2 months. And I'm sure when the new players, come on board, probably they'll be more anxious to want to achieve something before leaving. And I'm sure the decision to this effect will be taken earnestly. I mean, in terms of trying to reform ECOWAS documents.
All right.
Because I know they have especially in the issue of security, peace and security, advancing technologically, the issue of economic reforms, all these are there in the Vision 2030 that they are going to continue with.
Now, what lessons do you think ECOWAS learned from the coups in the Sahel that would be very important to consider when looking into these reforms?
The lesson to me is that there should be more dialogue. Maybe if the dialogue had been there, instead of just rushing to say we are going to sanction you. But again, that will now subject ECOWAS, just like so many, they've been receiving a lot of criticism that they are weak, and probably they favor countries depending on which country is is the one that's doing the whole thing, So ECOWAS should be too willing to take issues more seriously, by making sure that appropriate sanction is given, but without necessarily pushing. I'm sure what scared them was when they now said, when ECOWAS or the committee, the authority said they were going to put boots on ground as part of the condition for sanction. They've not been given that threat, but I think the authority put that to show how concerned they were when about 3 or 4 states are coming up with coup. 3 successfully carried it. In fact, 4. You will see that the way they handle the Guinea-Bissau was quite different from what happened in Mali or Burkina Faso or in Niger. So they should be more concerned about the citizen. I told you I've never supported sanction in such a way that I know those people that are going to be affected are the community generally, So they should probably find a way of resolving issue diplomatically first before taking actions, so that it won't. Because they didn't know, though. As I've said, that wasn't the first time they were placing sanctions on member states. But unfortunately, where it happened now, as are countries that are known, to be very fragile, and have been having this coup almost every 4, 10, within 4-6 years, So I think that was why the ECOWAS head of states choose to pull their feet down to say, no, I think we should say enough is enough. But they never thought that this is where it's going to land them, especially having now to lose three brotherly states that share boundary and relations across the borderlands.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ibrahim. Now, finally, looking ahead, are you optimistic or pessimistic about democracy and regional cooperation in West Africa?
Well, I think we have systemic problem that the leaders need to take pride in resolving. It is not the first time that we've been having coups, and people had attributed it to different reasons. Look at the popularity the Burkina Faso and even Niger are enjoying. I mean, the head of state. You know, you can see how popular they are, despite the fact that they are being led by military, because they were able to see physical development happening. They were able to see that people are now using their money to develop, to develop their state, to provide infrastructures, to build more schools. I mean, yes, with security challenges, but then they could see that, contrary to what they've been seeing with the civilian regimes, that these people are willing to do the right thing, without necessarily being challenged by the democratic channels that you have to do this. It's more or less a one-man or a 10-man decision, rather than passing through the ministerial, the permanent secretary. All those are already cut off. So it's a decision that is in the hand of one person, and for that is why you see the democratic rule, even when they are tramped upon, people are not bothered, But then, just as we rightly put it, the shrinking of the civil space too will come. But many of them will tell you, we are not interested in journalists who are looking for a way of doing things democratically, or the human rights aspect. They are not bothered about all these things. They are bothered about what they can see. And unless the civilian administrations, choose to be more developmental oriented, we are likely to see more of coups.
All right.
In West Coast.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ibrahim. And he closes by saying that unless democratic governments take development seriously, it is likely that we will see continued coups in West Africa. Today's discussion has highlighted that the issue of coups in the Central Sahel goes far beyond military takeovers. It reflects deeper questions about governance, legitimacy, security, development, and the relationship between citizens and their state. The response of ECOWAS and other regional actors remain highly debated, but what is clear is that the future of democracy and stability in West Africa will depend not only on defending constitutional order, but on addressing the structural challenges that continue to drive instability. My sincere thanks to Dr. Femi Ibrahim, conflict studies scholar, consultant, and former human rights observer with the African Union in Mali. Thank you, sir. And we also had Kopeb Dabugad, Executive Director of Center for Innovative Governance and Sustainable Development in Nigeria. Thank you to our listeners across West Africa and beyond. Thank you. Thank you to our listeners from across West Africa and beyond. I am Veronica Njai. Thank you for listening to Citizens Hour on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM. Stay informed, stay engaged.
Thank you.
Citizens Hour on West Africa Democracy Radio. It's your time to speak.
WADR is back on satellite. You can listen to West Africa Democracy Radio anywhere across Africa and Europe via satellite. Tune in on Eutelsat 16A at 16 degrees east with a frequency of 12687 megahertz and a symbol rate of 30,000. Stay connected to the heartbeat of West Africa. WADR. We are your trusted voice across the region.